Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our YouTube channel where we are discussing professors and assistant professors in the Media and Culture department. I'm here with Dennis Moigan, and today we're going to be discussing what he does at the uni and a recent publication he released in 2017. Could you tell me a bit more about yourself and your position at Utrecht University?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Well, I'm an assistant professor at the department, and my specific title, if you will, is assistant professor for digital methods and digital literacy. And I teach primarily methods courses using computational digital methods in the media domain. I'm also supervising bachelor and master theses, both at our department and in our joint program with linguistics, communication, information sciences. So in education, I mostly try to inspire students to look beyond their usual qualitative hermeneutic methods and to explore the value of, data and algorithms to make sense of media culture and, communication in society.
But what are you most passionate about in your research?
Yes. Well, I'm quite scattered at the moment. I research many different things, ranging from how journalists can use data and algorithms to monitor their journalistic practices, to recommender systems and digital cultures. But the core interest of mine is how the public, whoever that is in society, defines certain topics as important enough to talk about it, and how they try to find solutions to these topics, which are usually, challenges, problems, conflicts, for instance, migration crisis. Or what I'm working on right now is the role of technology, AI in society. So what I'm interested is, there's this thing AI, or more specifically now generative AI, ChatGPT and these sort of things. So who determines how valuable these technologies are? Who determines what are the risks and downsides are? And how do societies negotiate these trade-offs between the benefits of technology and the downsides? And this is often happening in a discourse, right, in society, where different stakeholders get to speak. Technology developers, journalists, politicians, civil society. So I'm interested in the structure of these discourses because analyzing how we talk about things can reveal who has power in society. And what is very important here, there is no public discourse, if you will, without media technology, right? Yeah. So here we need to take a look at news media, social media, places like TikTok and YouTube are as important for how people learn and think about the world as the 8 o'clock news on TV. So we need to really understand where media technologies fit into this thing called a public sphere, right? Yeah. That's basically what I'm most interested in. And right now, the main topic that I want to understand is public discourses about AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's like really important now, especially because it's so recent with the whole AI kind of boom. How did you get into this position of learning about digital methods?
Yeah, that was a very long and very unlikely journey, to be honest. So I grew up in Germany. I went to school there. I completed my Abitur, as we call it, which is the final exams in high school. And back then, I was mostly interested in history, and I was actually considering a career in art history. However, I signed up for several subjects back then. That was in the autumn of 2005. So I signed up for history, I signed up for English, I signed up for communication sciences, and a couple of other subjects. And I ended up studying primarily history, actual history, not art history, if that's a way to put it. English and communication sciences. And for a long time, it looked like I would become a historian with very little affiliation to anything quantitative at all. I enjoyed studying history, but halfway through my studies, I realized, what if I don't want to stay in academia? Maybe it's better to change my major subject.
Yeah.
So I switched to communication sciences, which had the potential to become a journalist or a marketeer or PR person. And I also like the content, communication sciences. And that program also included a lot of quantitative methods.
Yeah.
So I learned basic statistics there, mostly back then for traditional quantitative research, like surveys and experiments. Then I went to the UK because I had the chance to do a dual degree. So I spent a year in the UK, but there I studied not communication science, but media studies, which was again very qualitative, but I enjoyed it a lot. So in my upbringing, I had both the qualitative and the quantitative background. But then for my PhD, I wanted to do a strong combination of the two that makes use of more advanced digital methods. Yeah. And yeah, that was quite a development because for a while I thought, yeah, I just do qualitative research as a historian. Then I became a communication scientist in training where I thought, okay, I will do surveys and experiments. But then when I started my PhD in 2011, yeah, this digital methods field emerged and became quite interesting to look into.
In 2017, you published your book, Europe, the Crisis, and the Internet. Could you tell us a bit about what the book is about?
Yes. So that book is actually my PhD thesis that I worked on in the UK. What is it all about? Already during my master's thesis and before that my magister thesis, it's a degree that no longer exists. It's an old German degree. I already looked into how people use online technology to talk to each other about politics. So in my master's thesis, I looked into how different people used blogs during an election in the UK back then. What do they talk about? Who do they blame for things that go wrong in society? And then in my German, graduation thesis, I did something similar, but I looked at Europe as a whole, because especially the European Union, back then there was a lot of discussion about the potential for having a united European public sphere.
Yeah.
That within the European Union, Germans, French people, Greeks, so on and so forth, that they share something and should talk to each other. And here the internet was proposed as a common forum. And I was curious, is that actually happening, right? So I did it on a small scale for my German magister thesis, but I thought there's more that can be done to understand what are the topics, who's talking to whom, and is there really this transnational network of communication happening? So that became my PhD thesis, basically, inspired by my master's and magister thesis. Now, what changed though is that when I started my PhD, Europe went through a crisis, considerable financial crisis, involving also a lot of political tensions and conflicts. There was a lot of talk about the good Europeans in the north, Germany, the Netherlands, everyone who has their budget in check, apparently, and the not so good Europeans in Greece and in Spain, but also in Ireland, who overspent. So I thought, okay, what can I see here in the discourse? You know, especially if I look online, where people are supposed to talk about one, shared Europe. Do these conflicts change anything there? How are these conflicts discussed? So I sampled a large corpus of texts from different countries in different languages, English, German, French, primarily, to just have a look, okay, if people talk about Europe and the European Union, do they talk to each other, or do they, talk, in a way that shows that they're not listening to each other, but only shout at each other? Is there evidence for conflict as well? So yeah, I try to trace back how the Eurozone crisis resonated on the internet in these discourses during this crisis situation. And here already, I looked into ways to apply digital methods. Yeah. Because I did not only want to read 10 news articles from Germany, 5 blogs from the UK. This was happening on scale. The internet already was a pretty big thing in 2011, 2012. There was a lot going on. So I thought, I cannot read by myself and hand annotate 13,000, texts. So I had to look into different ways how algorithms can help with that. At the end, I used some algorithms because I was also a newbie back then. Today I would do it completely differently because I still had to do a lot of manual work
Yeah.
because also the technology was not as advanced as it is today. But at least, some of the work I could make a bit more efficient for
Yeah.
digital methods. So it was already a combination on something that I cared about. How do publics, in this case, on a transnational level, talk about things that matter, and what do we learn here about power, solidarity, and challenges in society?
Yeah. So, following up on the discussion of your book, what was the most prevalent kind of category that you found in your research?
Yeah, what I quickly observed after exploring the material and bringing some structure into it was that it may have started back then as a financial crisis with a lot of jargon about investments and inflation and how the currency is losing value. So a very expert-oriented discourse.
Yeah.
It was there, but that quickly evolved into a very brutal in parts political conflict actually. So that was the main observation. So when you say Eurozone crisis, basically, back then that's not only about the currency, it's very quickly about also, okay, who has power in Europe?
Yeah.
Who has too much influence? Back then Germany, and I think it still is, was one of the targets for this criticism, and vice versa. Who is to blame for the financial crisis, and then very quickly racism emerged. So racism, political tensions, and also links to other crises that became much bigger a couple of years later, like the migration crisis, were easily observable in this context. So even if it looked from the outside it's a financial crisis, it wasn't. It was way more profound and also more multi-layered, because all of these conflicts were kind of related.
Yeah.
So that was the most interesting finding. And maybe when it comes to the assessment of was there a European public sphere? Yes and no. Yes, all the Europeans in the European Union at least were affected by the same development. So we're all talking about this and about each other. Was it a idealized huge town square where every voice was the same and people were trying to find a reason-based solution to the problems? No. There was a lot of racism, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blaming, and a lot of also doubts. Should we have something like the European Union in the first place?
Yeah.
So it was a pretty sobering result if you have this idea of a public sphere that is representing everyone and connecting people. But well, that's an idealized notion anyway. So in that sense, again, the transnational discourse in Europe was not too different from what you see in a country like the Netherlands, where also people cannot agree over the color of of a piece of clothing or something.
Yeah. So we talked about your book and kind of the major findings in it. What are you researching now, and what do you want to research in the future?
Yeah. Well, the book is already quite a while.
Yeah.
It's already quite a while since it was published. But I'm still interested in this whole idea of public epistemology. It sounds super technical or philosophical, if you will, but basically, how does the public, generate knowledge, learn, and then also decide how to act, right? And I'm interested how this works for technology, because I think with all these debates and discussions about the transforming powers of AI, for instance, we should be very critical and take a good look who's determining how to read these developments. What is good, what is bad, what's a risk, what is not a risk. So I still continue what I started in my PhD, this idea of media technology and discourses, but specifically I want to know right now, for instance, how do we frame, literally present, and assess generative AI? How do we do this in words and in visuals? Right now I'm looking into public debates and also parliamentary speeches across Europe. Who's determining what public values we assign to AI? There's a lot of talk about AI making things more efficient,
Yeah.
making things fairer, so on and so forth. So who actually comes up with these ideas and
Yeah.
why? And to what extent do we need to find ways to make the voter, citizens, more critically aware about the implications if a politician, says or does not say
Yeah.
what public values and risks they yeah, associate with artificial intelligence. Huh? So it's all about who gets to speak about AI in what way, to what effect.
So it's really about kind of who holds the power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And since media communication plays such a big role, I also think it's necessary to take this mixed methods approach.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, and these are not my words, somebody wiser put it into a nice publication a couple of years ago, but media communication, on the one hand, happens on a massive scale, right? Millions of social media posts, thousands of news articles. So you need to have a bit of a understanding what happens quantitatively if you want to
Yeah.
understand these discourses, what ideas get pushed, which ideas are not so visible. But at the same time, it's true, reading a media text is a very subjective, individual experience, right? So how you will read a news article about AI will probably, evoke different, reactions in you than it would for me.
Yeah.
So I strongly argue, and I try to do this in my work, to combine always the quantitative and the qualitative, because that's what it needs to understand, these phenomena that we deal with. Yeah. So I also hope through my content-related research and AI discourses that I can also push methods for researching these things a bit further. Yeah, that's basically what I'm working on now, and also what I want to do in the foreseeable future. Specifically merging computational methods with traditional methods in the media and communication studies.
Is there anything else you want to share with the viewers? Maybe a fun fact or something you're interested in?
It's kind of a fun fact, and I'm a bit, embarrassed to admit it, but maybe it helps students in the humanities who are not sure, should they get into the computational stuff and the quantitative methods. In high school, I was not a very disciplined student, and I was not very good at math. So I always thought, I will never, look into algorithms and quantitative methods, because I'm more for words, reading, and writing. During my studies, I discovered it's actually not that intimidating, and actually quite easy to get into if you see a point in it.
Yeah.
So give it a chance. You don't need to be a mathematician or computer scientist to wrap your head around these methods and make them useful for yourself. It's also just a question of, are you willing to experiment and challenge yourself a bit?